Good Wednesday, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for October the 19th. Today, we are reading together in Job chapter 14, which is going to be the last chapter that concludes our first cycle of the speeches that make up this debate or discussion or discourse, whatever you might call it, between Job and the three men, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. Here within Job chapter 14, we're going to see Job again. He's teetering on the edge of his wit's end, and he is going to talk a lot in this chapter about death and how death would just be seemingly be something he would long for. But then there's issues with death because he's going to go back and forth between death as an ultimate end, and then he's going to go and talk about death being just a different existence, that there is going to be existence in the afterlife. It kind of goes back and forth between the two. Again, I think one of the things to keep in mind as we're reading through this chapter of Job chapter 14 is to remember that we don't know exactly what has been revealed to Job or anybody who's living during the time of Job concerning the afterlife. Really, in the Old Testament, the language of the afterlife is most of the time it's spoken in regard to Sheol, which is the place of the dead, the place of spirits, and yet the understanding, at least of what that place is, doesn't seem to have much depth. I don't know what had been revealed to them through whatever means by God. They seem to be just working with what they got. So to try to take our understanding of the afterlife, again, where we're talking about the place of disembodied spirits, we think about the rich man of Lazarus and Hades and the two sections of that, or whether you think about Paul speaking of wanting to go ahead and depart from this life so that he can go and be with Jesus. Whatever it is, we don't need to take that and press that upon Job and say, oh, how dumb was Job? He didn't understand, because again, we have a revelation given to us, and I believe is very different from what had been given to him. He didn't have, as far as we can tell, any sort of scripture to go on. Again, if we're thinking about Job being a man who lived a really long time ago during the time of the patriarchs, we just don't have that. So keep that in mind. Try not to be too harsh on Job as we read this, thinking, oh, well, you just got all wrong, Job, because working with maybe less information, perhaps a lot less information than what we have given to us, even though I would argue that the information we have isn't very extensive either. But nonetheless, here in Job chapter 14, again, we're going to see Job's final speech, or the final section of Job's final speech for cycle 1. And then tomorrow we will get into cycle 2, beginning with the first speech of Eliphaz. All right, reading here in Job chapter 14 and verse number 1. Anyone born of woman is short of days and full of trouble. Can't argue with Job too much on that, can we? He blossoms like a flower, then withers. He flees like a shadow and does not last. Do you really take notice of one like this? Will you bring me into judgment against you? Again, he's speaking to God here. He said, I'm not going to speak to y'all anymore, his friends. He said, my argument isn't with you. So speaking to God, do you really take notice of one like this? Will you bring me into judgment against you? Who can produce something pure from what is impure? No one. Since a person's days are determined and the number of his months depends on you, and since you have set limits he cannot pass, look away from him and let him rest so that he can enjoy his day like a hired worker. Basically asking God to take his oppressive hand off of him and just let him be and enjoy this life to whatever small degree it seems like he can. Verse number 7. Verse number 7. There is hope for a tree. If it is cut down, it will sprout again, and its shoot will not die. If its roots grow old in the ground and its stump starts to die in the soil, the scent of water makes it thrive. and produce twigs like a sapling. But a person dies and fades away. He breathes his last. Where is he? As water disappears from a lake and a river becomes parched and dry, so people lie down never to rise again. They will not wake up until the heavens are no more. They will not stir from their sleep. If only you would hide me in Sheol and conceal me until your anger passes. If only you would appoint a time for me and then remember me. When a person dies, will he come back to life? If so, I would wait all the days of my struggle until my relief comes. You would call and I would answer you. You would long for the work of your hands. For then you would count my steps and would not take note of my sin. My rebellion would be sealed up in a bag, and you would cover over my iniquity. But as a mountain collapses and crumbles, and a rock is dislodged from its place, as water wears away stones, and torrents wash away the soil from the land, so you destroy a man's hope. You completely overpower him, and he passes on. You change his appearance and send him away. If his sons receive honor, he does not know it. If they become insignificant, he is unaware. He feels only pain of his own body and mourns only for himself. Job chapter 14. Looking at verse number 11 on, it seems as if Job just has no hope in the afterlife. In his mind right now, he's saying, once I die, I'm done. I'm gone. And there's nothing else that takes place. That seems to be his, as he's teetering right here and as he's wrestling with this, trying to understand, it seems as if he's saying, once we die, they will not wake up until heavens are no more. They will not stir from their sleep. There's just a non-existence in a sense. There is a lack of consciousness in death. There's just nothing going on. So what he desires then in verses 13 and 14 specifically is he's asked the question, well, when a person dies, then will he come back to life? So is there a consciousness? Is there something in the afterlife? And he says, if so, then I would wait all the days of my struggle until my relief comes. If there is relief from this life in the afterlife, then cool. That's a bit of hope. And he says, in that then you would call and I would answer you. You would long for the work of your hands, for then you would count my steps. You would not take note of my sin. My rebellion would be sealed up in a bag, and you would cover over my iniquity. Job saying that sounds good. Sounds a lot better than what I'm dealing with right now. But then he teeters back to the other side. But as mountain collapses and crumbles, as a mountain collapses and crumbles, and rock is lodged from its place, as water wears away stones, torrents wash away the soil from the land, so you destroy man's hope. He's like, it's just hopeless. It's just hopeless. There is no sort of hope at all. There's nothing. I'm just suffering, and that's just how it is, and that's just how it's going to be. That's Job's mindset right now. And again, I'm not going to sit here and blame the guy. I'm not going to sit here and hurl accusations at him or try to speak ill of him. He's going through something that I just can't even imagine. He is going through something where he is in a deep situation of distress upon not just his mind, his heart, his body. And he's got friends who are sitting here accusing him. They're just saying, hey, you've done something to bring this upon yourself. Job says, I haven't. Excuse me. Job knows that he hasn't done anything egregious to warrant such punishment from God. Again, they continue to say you must have, because God wouldn't do this otherwise. So he again is just death is looking better and better for him in certain ways, although it kind of stinks in his mind because that means there's nothing going on. On the other side, maybe there is something going on, and there is hope in that, and there is relief, and the man's just struggling. I mean, that's the bottom line to it, as he's sitting here wrestling with his current reality and what he wishes was his reality. That's what we see in this first cycle. Again, it's a bit of generic. It's a general in a sense from his friends. They're just saying, yeah, there's something that you must have done. Da, 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 da. Well, eventually they're going to come out and they're going to make very very pointed accusations. Like, no, Job, you know what? You must have done this specific thing or this specific thing, and or this or that, and that's why you're enduring this particular type of distress. So unfortunately, there is not going to be really much help from his friends in this regard as we continue through these cycles. We'll get into cycle 2 tomorrow as we look at the speech of Eliphaz the Temanite in Job chapter 15. Hope that you'll be able to tune in for that. Thinking about this, though, about this chapter, aren't we so appreciative of the fact that we do have in our time a greater revelation, a greater understanding from Scripture concerning what does happen in the next life, that there will be peace in the next life for those who are faithful to God. That though I appreciate a lot of what Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4 and 5, speaking about the broken down tent that he is in right now. And even whenever that is taken away, that we'll be clothed with something greater next life and something even better in the resurrection and in eternity. And certainly if we were in Job's shoes to some degree, or in a similar situation, I think we would be greatly benefited by the hope that we have of what has been revealed to us in Scripture, that there is peace and rest and glory waiting for those who are faithful to God in this life. Even if we don't have any of that in this life, in a sense, even if our life is very chaotic, even if it's filled with a great deal of pain and sorrow in various degrees, we have the hope of the afterlife, and that will be much better because God will be there and he will bless those who are faithful to him and persevere through those difficulties in this life. I want to be very thankful for that. Thank you so much for tuning into this reading today. Hope that you have a great rest of your Wednesday. Looking forward to being with everyone tonight as we gather together at 7 p.m. for our Bible classes. Very much looking forward to that. I hope that we'll be able to see everyone there, and that those who are not able to be there, hope that you'll check out our stream on the Facebook stream or on our YouTube channel. Again, thanks for tuning in and have a great rest of your